Shalom Aleichem. Welcome to Breslov Web Seminar Parshat Re'eh. Re'eh is the fourth Parsha in Dvarim. It's the third of the Haftarahs of the Nechama, of the consolation of Yerushalayim. Aniya soyada loy nuchama. You a poor person who's gone through a storm, right? And it doesn't look like you have any consolation. I'm going to scrub and wash all your stones with a certain type of cleanser. And you're going to be like dressed and clothed with pearls and beautiful stones and whatnot. Hashem is telling us, just have the patience to wait. Parshat Re'eh, that was the Haftarah, but the Torah itself, the Parsha of Re'eh, is a Parsha of patience too. You have to have the patience to wait things out, let them come, and they will come to us. Right? It starts off, Re'eh onuchi nosein lifnechem hayoim bracha uklola. I am putting before you today a blessing and a curse. Right? And that's the way the Parsha starts off. I'm putting before you a blessing all of us want. But what's the curse? Right? So I saw in Svarim, it's a beautiful thing. It says the word, I'm giving to you a blessing. Of course Hashem is going to send blessing to the Jewish nation. But what's the word uklala? He says when you do a blessing, when you do a mitzvah, the next pasuk says, Es ham bracha, the bracha that I'm giving you, Asher enochi mitzavcho hayoim, that I am commanding you today to do the mitzvahs. That is the blessing. And what's the curse? Curse, right? The words uklala in Hebrew is vav, kuf, lamed, lamed, hey. That's how it's spelled. Vav, kuf, lamed, lamed, hey. Right? The word uklala is an acrostic of the words v'hakeren kayemes lochem la'olam haba. Right? You do the mitzvahs in this world. That's your blessing. Right? And you should know that the principle that the mitzvahs that you did is going to endure for you, for the world to come to. In other words, the klola is not really a klola, it's really a blessing, that the blessing will remain forever and ever. That's uklola. Right? That's how the Parsha starts off, and it talks about coming to the land of Israel and building what you have to, especially building Yerushalayim, where you'll build a house for Hashem, you'll build the Beis HaMikdash. And Rabbi Nachman always talks about the Beis HaMikdash, the temple, which is the beginning of the Parshat Re'eh, things that you'll build the temple, and this is what you do in the temple. There are certain things. Rabbi Nachman says the person's temple is really his mind. It's his mind. It's the brain of a person is where the God could rest. That's your Beis HaMikdash, your own personal holy temple. That's your mind, your brain. Depends what you put in it naturally. Right? You can put in a lot of junk. Right? There was a fella, very famous television personality in the 50s and the 60s. He had a show, his name was Steve Allen. And they asked him once, 40 years later, they asked him, is it true that if you view television for 40 years, your mind can really go? And he said, well, it's understandable. Now here's a man who made his money in television. And yet, he said, it's very understandable. If you eat junk food for 40 years, what do you think your body's going to be made of? Right? So if you feed your brain junk food for 40 years, what do you think your brain's going to be made of? So, your temple, your brain, what is your brain? And it's something that you could make it a sanctuary for Hashem. You are the one who's able to sanctify your mind, purify your mind, think good thoughts, think positive thoughts, think always that you can do, Not that you can't do it. There was a little train called Thomas the Little Train, and he used to go around chugging and saying, I know I can, I know I can. Right? We do that too. We can do it too. I know I can. I know I can get myself on the right track. I know I can better myself. I know I can sanctify my mind. So that's the way the Parsha starts, and that's the way it continues. Then the Torah has a passage about idolatry. If you have a whole city that turns to idolatry, what happens? Or you have somebody who is morally corrupt, and he tries to corrupt others to serve idolatry. And the Torah deals with it in a way, tells you that this is the one mitzvah where you're allowed to entrapment, right? The FBI, police, entrapment is forbidden, right? And the Torah, entrapment for a person to commit a sin is forbidden, except in the case of idolatry. If you know somebody who's going to veer you from the path of God, right, you're allowed to entrap him and do away with him. That's the laws that come out in the Parsha. And then you have the Parsha of Tzedakah. And here it's an amazing thing. Parsha of Tzedakah, giving tithes, taking off tithes in the seventh year, the sabbatical year. And then it talks about Tzedakah, giving charity. And that's where the mitzvah in the Torah is. In chapter 15, talks about the mitzvah of tzedakah. Reb Nosson has an amazing thing. In this passage, there are two different contradictory verses. One says, Ki lo yechtal evyon mikerev ha'aretz. One says, there will be no lack of poor people in the land. There will always be poor people. And another verse says that Efes ki lo yihye b'cha evyon. You will not have any impoverished among you. I mean, two contradictory statements, right? What happens? Nosson explains, and this is incredibly deep and incredibly amazing when you think of it. There is a certain amount of bounty that's coming down to the world. Some people have fortunes, hundreds of millions, billions of dollars, right? 30 billion, 20 billion, 15 billion. I mean, sums that 50 years ago were unheard of. These people have it. And yet there are people, the vast majority, who have very little, or maybe nothing, if not almost nothing. And it's very, very difficult for the people who don't have anything. What are they supposed to do? Right? But God always sends down bounty, and there's enough bounty in the world for everybody to live comfortably. There is. It's present in the world. Plenty of money for everybody. So then what's the problem? How come some have it and most don't? Reb Nosson says that the channels of Shefa, the channels of bounty that come down to the world, all come down straight to the person. When? The Gemara says, the Medrash explains, that you will not have any impoverished in your land is when you do God's will. But if you don't do God's will, so then there's going to be no lack of impoverished. Right? That's how the Gemara explains the contradiction. And Reb Nosson explains so that the bounty comes down to everybody. But what happens if we do not do God's will? Then the channels of bounty get mixed up, and they get intertwined, and they get locked up one within the other, so that the bounty that comes down is coming down, but it ends up in one channel and it goes. Why that person? We don't know. But that person gets all the wealth. Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, the Rockefellers that they used to have, and the Mellons and all that. Whatever. People have plenty of money, Rothschild and whatnot. But the channels of wealth come down to all those people. And since they're mixed up, the poor people don't get. So when it comes to charity, says Rabbi Nosson, and this is an amazing thing, is just think about it. If I have money, it's really not mine. It really should go to the other guy. If I had that kind of money, I have 100 million, I have 50 million, whatever it may be. All that I have really belongs to other people too, because the bounty comes down equally to everybody. But it's in my hands now, right? What could I do to rectify the situation? I give charity. What I'm doing is I'm returning that bounty that could come to that poor person. He's getting it now through me. I become a channel now to give God's bounty to the poor person. And this is what the verse means. Malva chonein ladol malva lashem. Somebody who is kind and considerate to a poor person, he becomes a lender to Hashem, because he's giving Hashem the money that Hashem was sending toward him through the mixed up channels. He's now taking it and giving it to the poor person. It's like he's lending Hashem the money, right? You imagine that you become a lender to Hashem by giving tzedakah, by giving the charity. You become a lender to Hashem. It's an amazing thing. So Reb Nosson says that when we give charity, the more we give, the more we open up the channels so that everybody can have, not just me. I'll get mine. I have mine. Baruch Hashem. I have mine. But if I give to others, I'm opening up more channels and letting more and more people, so that eventually there won't be any impoverished people in the land. Right? That's how the Parshat keeps on going. And then Hashem says, you think you're not consoled in the Haftarah? Hashem says, no. You're going to have tremendous hatzlacha. You're going to have tremendous blessing, tremendous blessing from Hashem for everything that's going to have. You're going to have untold wealth. May Hashem help that it comes to all of us. We all have good health. We have the wealth plenty, so that we never have to worry about paying the next bill. Right? And Hashem should help that we should, the main thing, have the fear of Hashem, not to get involved with idolatry, but to rather get involved with faith in Hashem. And that way we'll be able to come and see the coming of Mashiach, the building of the Beis HaMikdash, when everybody will have only good and blessing. Amen. Selah.